commemoration in Marikana. Can you tell us more about your experience in covering the story?
I think what the prayers did that we just heard now, they really summed it up. Today is about a day of healing. It's about a day of remembering where the 44 men died and remembering where the families are trying to move towards. They're trying to move towards healing themselves. They're trying to move towards closure. And for them, getting closure is an issue of compensation. And that is quite a minefield in itself, because it's quite an interesting situation that we've seen happen so far. But the big message that should be coming through today is about closure. It's about healing. It's about not just healing the people of Marikana, but healing the country. Because what happened on the 16th of August in 2012 was an horrific tragedy that we hadn't seen since the likes of Sharpeville, since the likes of what happened with the student uprising in 1976. So really, this is a situation that was quite damaging for post-democratic South Africa. So the big message on the third-year anniversary is healing.
Well, you're iterating international headlines that have criticized, the tragedy as one of the worst since post-apartheid South Africa, especially as far as, labor strikes are concerned. But let's go back to the Farlam Commission of Inquiry. Advocate Dumisa had widely criticized the Farlam for not compensating, the victims' families as what he hoped would be achieved. Do you think the Commission overall had achieved what it was mandated to do?
You remember the terms of reference of the Commission was to investigate the causes that led up to the events on the 16th, what happened on the 16th, the week of the 16th, and post that week. That was really the terms of reference that was given to the commissioners by the President. And I think the language of what the Marikana Commission was supposed to be about sort of got muted, and it got convoluted, and we found that certain people took advantage of different elements of it. Yeah. At the end of the day, the Commission was there to investigate the causes. They were not there necessarily to cast blame on specific people. They were there to become a channel to funnel out all the information. You remember there was 18 months that was spent on the Commission, over 56 witnesses, thousands and thousands of hours that were clocked in, millions of money that was spent by the NPA to pay for the lawyers that represented the police, to pay for the entire Marikana Commission staff. There was a lot of money that went in for the lawyers of the injured miners, the LRC, SERI. So it was really a massive situation that had to happen. And the Commission's final finding report was as fair as possible, because there were wrongs that happened on both sides. The miners did not behave in the best possible way that they could have behaved, regardless of what they were seeking. At the same time, the police did not follow the correct protocol. Who do you say was the person that was at fault? Yes, the police should not have shot live ammunition at these striking miners, because at the end of the day, the miners didn't have an issue with the police. They wanted redress from lawmen. So I do understand what Advocate Dumisa Nsebeza was saying in his complaints about the Commission being a whitewash and his unhappiness around the issue of compensation. But we should remember that the terms of reference of the Marikana Commission was not necessarily to point blame to somebody specific. So I think, the lawyers for the injured miners and for the miners that had passed away would then need to seek redress on the next level, which would be to the courts.
Let's talk about, the people that were directly affected by the Marikana tragedy, being the victims' families, as well as some of the injured miners. 30,000 pages worth of evidence later. Do you think they were prepared for the outcome that was from the Farlam Commission?
I don't think anybody was prepared. You'll remember that, in the first few weeks after the Marikana tragedy had happened, and when the commission was set up, it was in August of 2012, there were people who were still dealing with the tragedy. There was a lot of sadness. There was a lot of unhappiness. And the logistics of it were mammoth. It was a mammoth task logistically. It was about getting the post-mortem results for the 34 men that had died on the 16th of August. inquest. It was about getting the post-mortem results of the 10 other people that had died in the previous days. It was about getting the ballistics reports from the police officers who'd shot rounds. And there were thousands of rounds that were shot. And not just from R5 rifles, not just from live ammunition. It was from pellet guns. It was Lonmin security guard that was shooting. It was SAPS. It was people from Coin Security. So just the sheer scope of evidence that was before the commission and the commissioners and the evidence leaders, it was something that I really don't think in hindsight they'd really anticipated and necessarily prepared for.
And that brings me to my next question to you regarding civil claims. Take me through that.
So the issue with the civil claims is that we have SERI, the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, and they're representing the 37 families of the men that were killed. And this is the 34 men that were killed on the 16th, as well as 3 others that were killed on the 13th. And they filed their civil claims on Tuesday to say that they want financial compensation. And they've named the police ministry, they've named Lonmin, they've named Coin Security Guard. And what happened on Friday is that the lawyers for the injured miners filed their 279 claims, plus an additional 30 others. And they have named the presidency, as well as NPA, as well as Lonmin and the police as the respondents. And they're saying we want an average of 3 million for one miner, because they quote one of the miners who was shot while he was 23 and he was unable to walk. And they're saying for him it's going to be 3 million. Now the amounts vary. Yeah. On average, it would be about half a million per miner that they're seeking recompense from. But overall, we're looking at billions of rands that the lawyers for the injured miners are asking for, that SERI is asking for from government. Does our government have that money? Do our different departments have that money? Is this going to be a precedent-setting civil case situation that we've never seen in South Africa? You remember in South Africa, we don't really have a precedent for civil cases per se. We don't have a precedent for group action cases. So this situation is going to certainly set a precedent in the country for any groups of people who feel that they've been done wrong by the government. But at the end of the day, as much as they can file their civil cases or their civil claims, government needs to be able to respond to say, we have the money, we don't have the money. Or if they do have the money, how much can they pay? Maybe they can only afford to pay 50,000 per person. So it's not necessarily, as much as we're hearing all these amazing amounts of monies and the fact that it's in billions, it does not mean it's going to translate into each miner getting that amount of money. So it certainly is going to be interesting over the next couple of months to see how the issue of the civil claims ends up translating. But it will definitely be a precedent-setting case that we'll be watching eagerly in South Africa.
That'll be interesting indeed. We look forward to just covering, of course, the story and seeing how the presidency responds. But let's take a look at other, responses now, especially from a trade union's perspective. We are expecting AMCU to take the podium today. We know that the SG Jeff Mphahlele is in attendance. What do you expect to be, a response or reaction, today from AMCU?
It's been 2 months since the report findings have been tabled by the President in June. And we do know that in the past week, the big issue has been the issue of compensation. So I suspect that the biggest concern by AMCU today and what the speech will be around the fact that there was not financial compensation. And I think we need to be clear around what kind of compensation they're looking for. Yes, they may be looking for an apology, but the biggest issue that they're looking for is for financial recompense for the families that were affected and for the injured miners as well. And we'll also be hearing from AMCU their unhappiness and dissatisfaction with the findings of the Marikana Commission. In as much as Joseph Mathunjwa himself, as the president of AMCU, was exonerated by the Commission in saying that he tried his level best to try and calm down the miners, AMCU itself was not necessarily exonerated. And that's been a sticking point, a sore point for AMCU. And during the week, they had a press conference. And they said in the press conference they're consulting their legal attorneys because they're grievously unhappy with the outcomes of the report. And they want to know if they can have a court intervene in terms of relooking at the final outcomes of the report. I'm not quite sure what they're hoping they'll get out of a review of the report, but they're certainly hoping that there will be some sort of another adjudical process that happens whereby they relook at some of the key points that were handed down in the report.
Nozintombi, as we also, unconsciously sort of work towards the 4th commemoration, which will be the 16th of August 2016, moving forward, what do you expect to be the next step, of course, from different stakeholders involved in this case?
Well, I think government will definitely have to come to the forefront and give us a decisive reason as to what action forward they're going to take. Because you remember when the report came out, the different government departments that were identified as having played a role in the commission, this would be the policing department, this would be the Ministry of Minerals and Energy department. They need to have studied the report and say, this is what we're hoping will be the future outcomes. We're looking at an issue of getting the land to build houses. Marikana, the incoming settlement of Marikana, is still shacks. Yeah. There's no running water, there's no electricity. 3 years after 44 men died just so they can have a living wage, so they can have electricity and running water. And I think those are the issues that government will be looking at. How do they start formalizing getting proper housing, getting proper infrastructure for the people who are living in Nkaneng and some of the other settlements around in Marikana. I think the presidency has done an amazing job in trying to get the whole country to rally behind as one voice. It doesn't help for us as a society to take different factions. We need to move forward. And I think the presidency has done an amazing job in trying to speak as one voice and saying we are South Africans and we need to be working together. On the side of AMCU and the lawyers for the injured and arrested miners, for them the big issue will be the issue of the civil cases and making sure that they do get some sort of compensation, financial compensation for the families of the 44 men that had died and for the injured and arrested miners, or the miners that were injured, and they number close to 300.
Yeah, but before I let you go, I mean, also we've seen this conversation continue in Parliament, different political parties also criticizing how the Marikana tragedy has been handled, by government. Can we expect more conversations and debates, of course, in Parliament, as we've seen, in recent reports?
Certainly. Yeah. The issue of Marikana, the Marikana tragedy has really touched at the country's heartstrings. And I think politicians in Parliament are still echoing those emotions, those sentiments. But I think it starts with our parliamentarians to start speaking as one voice and saying, this has happened. It doesn't help to cause blame. Let's move forward. How are we going to make sure that the children of Mambush, the man who is called the man in the green blanket, how are we going to make sure that his children are financially cared for, that his parents are financially cared for, that the rest of his siblings, those that he was taking care of with his meager 4,500 salary as a rock drill operator, how are his family members taken care of? Let's not revisit the issue of how he died. Let's move forward in terms of dealing with how do we get recompense for all of the 44 men that died and hundreds of their family members that are now suffering as a result of the fact that the breadwinner was lost. How do we get compassion and recompense for those people?
SABC News reporter Nozintombi Miya, thank you so much for your time and adding value into this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was our SABC News reporter Nozintombi Miya, keeping up, up to date with what's been happening with Marikana, rather taking us back first, reiterating, of course, her experience into working and targeting very closely with the Marikana tragedy. But for now, though, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll also follow the commemoration live at Marikana.